What is one stock that I would completely not buy the dip on when it came down to markets are now oversold, right? You want to pick maybe one or three different stocks to be invested in. Which one just would not make sense? Now, of course, this is just my opinion. I'm going to share my opinion with you guys and why I think MSTR would be the most terrible stock to ever be invested in, especially with what's to come. So first off, MSTR did have a very bullish move where it went from overall lows of $13 to overall highs of $543. Now, for those that do not know what MSTR is, feel free to look into it. In my opinion, it's a bullshit company that borrows against its investors at 0% interest so it could buy Bitcoin. The actual underlying business that it had to be publicly traded, it loses money every single quarter. That's not an opinion, it's a fact. Like literally, MicroStrategy is a BS company that lives off of the shares or the money that it borrows against its investors. If it was not able to borrow against its investors, Michael Saylor would not have the attention he has now. And again, any company can do this, but it's only Michael Saylor that is doing it to this degree. And again, he's incredibly leveraged. So again, if he could do it with a bullshit company, Elon would be able to do it with Tesla. Jensen would be able to do it with NVIDIA. All these incredible CEOs that run extremely successful companies would be able to do it with their companies, but they don't because they're too busy actually growing their business. MicroStrategy has no business that actually makes money, right? It loses money every single quarter, and it's dumped the last Bitcoin rally as well, where it went from highs of $9 from lows of $9 to highs of 130, all the way back down to $13 as Bitcoin crashed. You might be like, oh, that must have been years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago. No, this was back in 2021. During the Bitcoin boom, MicroStrategy pushed up because, again, this is when Michael Saylor in 2020 announced that he was borrowing against his investors to buy Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin dumped, then again, so did MicroStrategy, all the way back down to $13, almost $14 per share, losing about 95% of its value. So again, what do you think is going to happen if, very specifically, if Bitcoin begins to drop? Well, then MicroStrategy will also lose 90 to 95% of its value because its entire value is made up on its ability to buy Bitcoin while Bitcoin is thriving. If Bitcoin is not thriving, neither will this. Now, if markets do begin to recover, it does give Bitcoin the environment to thrive as well. But why would MicroStrategy maybe not be the safest investment? And again, it's because of this sole reason. And feel free to look into it. I reassure you. So strategy to sell as much as $21 billion worth in preferred stock. This is something that you will see Michael Saylor is going to continue to do and has always done. He continues to dilute his investors. So what he does is he does this share offering. So he's going to, at any given point, he can now offer $21 billion worth of his stock and dump it into the market. This dilutes current investors. And this is why I do not think investing in MicroStrategy would make any sense for people that are trying to buy the dip and make money when markets recover. Because yes, Bitcoin could recover, but because you're being so heavily diluted with MicroStrategy, you will not gain that same percent return when investing in MicroStrategy. At least that's not how it has been recently working. And because of that, we're very, very simple. If you're bullish on Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin itself. Why would you buy a stock that borrows against you so then it can buy Bitcoin and then continue to offer more shares to continue to dilute you? It makes no sense. If you're bullish on Bitcoin, buy the asset itself, Bitcoin. That's all, right? There's no other reason to overcomplicate it. And if we look at this, look at MicroStrategy. Let's look at the 1 hour time frame. Let's see if we could pull it up here. No, I'm going to have to go on the 4 hour. On the 4 hour time frame, MicroStrategy peaked at high. Look at the date down here. So it tells you the date down here. MicroStrategy peaked right around November 21st. And it's been on a downtrend ever since. But if we look at Bitcoin and we look at the 4 hour, we don't have a 4 hour there, but we see when it peaked, November 21st is way down here, right? Look at the date, right? November 21st. Yet Bitcoin was still rising. And then Bitcoin hit all-time highs at $109,455. This wasn't until January 20th. So this was 2 months later. Bitcoin was still increasing in value, but MicroStrategy wasn't. This is the whole point that I'm making this video. Yes, I do not like MicroStrategy. I think it's an absolute Ponzi loop. The only reason that it exists is because its ability to borrow against its investors, because again, the actual business itself, it's a terrible company. And looking at its past, when Bitcoin drops, as it always does, so will MicroStrategy. And it will, just like back in 2021 to 2022, lose 90 to 95% of its value. Simply, again, if the focus was to buy the dip on a stock and make money as markets recover, why would you do it on a company that continues to get diluted? Like you saw, November 11th, right? And then where was MicroStrategy on January 20th, right? Because that's when Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. Well, if we look at this very carefully, we could see that, wait, this is where MicroStrategy was during that same time. We could see right around $398 per share. Okay, well, what is that exactly? From previous all-time highs to the highs that it made when Bitcoin was actually at all-time highs, MicroStrategy was still down 25%. Now, again, I'm just using this as an analogy. Let's say that Bitcoin does go on a bull run and it makes new highs at $120,000 per coin. Why would you ever, knowing that it crashes, knowing that it gets diluted, knowing that it was down 25% when Bitcoin was at all-time highs, yet this one was down 25% from previous all-time highs, why would you ever want to be invested in a company that doesn't experience the same type of ROI that the actual asset that it's investing in does? Very, very simple. If you want to buy Bitcoin or buy an actual Bitcoin ETF. Why would you ever buy this MicroStrategy that literally dilutes you, borrows against your shares, and the only reason it exists is because its ability to do so? And knowing that it crashes when Bitcoin crashes, and it crashes more than Bitcoin, why would you ever want to open yourself to that type of exposure to risk, right? Because the difference between investing and trading is that, well, with investing, you normally don't have the intention to sell. And if that's the case and you have no intention to sell at all-time highs, very simple. Then when Bitcoin drops, so will MicroStrategy. And if it loses anywhere close to what it lost last time, that means that MicroStrategy can lose an additional 90 to 95%. Why would you ever put yourself in a position in losing that? There are so many amazing stocks out there. Nvidia, Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, whatever it is, right? They're good quality companies. Shoot, you could even just invest in NASDAQ or the S&P 500, right? Yes, they don't offer crazy ROIs within a short period of time, but if you have no intention of selling, then why does it matter? At least you'll get to keep it with NASDAQ or S&P 500. With this, you're going to be in the red, 90 to 95%, because we all know that MicroStrategy will crash, and probably more now this time because it's more leverage than anything else. And the thing that cracks me up is that I've never seen anyone like this. All Michael Saylor ever does is he tries to convince everyone else that they need to buy Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is so valuable, why does the value have to be explained? I'm never convinced that I have to, I never have like a broker's telling me, oh, you need to be invested right now. You need to do it right now, right? Or to buy gold or to buy real estate. We have people that obviously offer whatever it is that it might be, but in Michael Saylor's words, sell a kidney and buy Bitcoin. Why is it that if something is so valuable that we need to be convinced by every other crypto bro that we need to be invested? It just makes no sense to me. If something is so valuable, you shouldn't need to be convinced to invest in that asset. It should explain itself. It should sell itself, right? Because its utility makes sense, its value makes sense. But guess what? They need you to buy for them to exit. It's the same BS over and over again. Michael Saylor says just that Bitcoin is on a 99% discount. Of course, he would say that as he owns MicroStrategy, the most Bitcoin than anyone else. So why wouldn't he say anything to encourage others to invest in the same asset that he does? It's common sense, right? Well, it's not common sense because not everyone would do that, because if this was a publicly traded stock that he was encouraging you to buy and telling you to sell everything to buy it, he'd be in jail. That's simple. Again, very, very simple. Why is it, if it's so valuable, do you need to be convinced that you need to buy it? It's never happened in the past before where someone can explain to you what it is, but they shouldn't try to make you feel bad for not investing in it, or that if you don't invest in it, then you're against them. It's the most hilarious thing. And the thing that I want to quickly bring up is the Magnificent Seven, how much they've lost during this pullback and how much they would offer in potential recovery. Remember, when a stock sells off, it offers nearly double in recovery. So Tesla, nearly 100%, Nvidia, closer to 40%, Alphabet, right around 40%, Amazon, 40%, Meta, 40%, Microsoft, 40%, Apple, 40%. And again, we can pull it up very quickly. Something like Nvidia, because it's sold off. I mean, it's recovered quite a bit based off of its performance last week. But other than that, again, if it goes back to previous all-time highs, this thing would offer around 30% of potential recovery, something to take into consideration. So, and then the last thing that I wanted to show you very quickly is someone just opened a $332 million short position on Bitcoin. And then this is the position itself. So we'll see exactly what ends up happening. And again, I'm a big believer that, if you are truly someone that wants to invest in an asset, you don't need to convince me. I don't need to convince you. As long as you understand your potential for profit and your exposure for loss, all power to you. But when it's so blatantly obvious that we need to be convinced to be buying this thing, I mean, at that point, like, I don't want it. Maybe you do. Maybe that's the type of trader or investor that you want to be. But when something is up this much, we all know that it's going to come crashing down a significant amount. I just think that it's so obvious that we just need to stay away from MicroStrategy because of how much potential it has to come crashing down. So again, let me know in the comment section what you think. Hope that earned a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing, and do not forget, as long as markets continue to downturn, I will continue to open and close a short position on MicroStrategy, especially with its performance that it had on Friday, a really nice push up, which now allows it to be overbought. If Bitcoin begins to sell off into the market open tomorrow, which is already selling off right now, but if it continues to sell off even more, get ready for MicroStrategy to continue to drop, therefore offering a really nice short setup. We'll talk about it a little bit more in our live trading session tomorrow. If you want to tune on in, second link in the description down below. I appreciate your time. Like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take care, team.